$400. That's what Duval says the check engine light will cost this time, the fourth time in 3 years. You have $11 million sitting in a brokerage account you checked on your phone in the parking lot before you walked in, and you are standing here, in a mechanic's shop that smells like motor oil and old coffee, doing real math on $400 like it might not clear. Duval wipes his hands on the same gray rag he always wipes them on before he says a number out loud. A habit you noticed the first time you brought this car in 3 years ago and have watched every single time since. The same rag, folded the same way, tucked into the same back pocket between uses. Same sensor as last time. He says, I can order the part today, have it in by Thursday, or you drive it another few months and see if it throws again. He says this the way he says everything. Flat. No sales pitch in it. A man who has genuinely never tried to talk you into anything in 3 years of fixing the same car. You tell him to order the part. He nods, writes it on a pad, and doesn't ask why someone drives a car this old into his shop every 18 months instead of buying something newer, because it has never once seemed to occur to him that the answer might be complicated. You could buy a car today, not finance one, not put money down and carry a payment. Buy one, in full, in cash, before lunch, and still have 11 million and change sitting exactly where it was this morning. You know the number in your account down to the dollar because you checked it 40 minutes ago, the way you check it most mornings, not out of worry, just habit. The same way some people check the weather before deciding what to wear, except the forecast never changes and you check it anyway. $400. $11 million. You have never once in your life said those two numbers out loud in the same sentence to another human being. And you are not about to start with a mechanic who thinks you're stretching to afford a sensor. It took 18 years to get here. Not one good year. Not a single decision anyone would put in a documentary. You started at 22, putting $60 a paycheck into an index fund because a coworker at your first job told you to, and you didn't have a better idea. You raised it when you got raises. $5 here, $20 there. Never a dramatic jump, never a windfall, just a slow ratchet upward every time your income moved and your lifestyle, mostly, didn't. Duval's radio is playing low behind the counter, some classic rock station he's had on every time you've ever been in here, and for a second you just listen to it instead of thinking, the way you sometimes do when a thought gets too heavy to hold straight through. You didn't touch it. When the market dropped 40% in 2008, and you were 26 years old, watching a number on a screen lose almost half its size in 5 months, checking it anyway. Every few days, the way you'd check a wound to see if it was healing, and it eventually did. You didn't touch it during the divorce, when touching it would have been the easy thing to do, when a lawyer on the other side of the table clearly assumed there was more to find and never quite did, because none of it lived anywhere a discovery request would think to look. You didn't touch it 3 years ago either, the same year you started bringing this exact car to Duval when the transmission needed work and a smarter, less stubborn version of you might have just written a check for something new instead of fixing a car worth roughly $900. 18 years of not touching money is not a story. It is just a very long stretch of nothing happening, over and over, until one day a number on an app said 11 million, and you sat in your kitchen and didn't feel anything you expected to feel. Duval looks up from the pad. You want me to check the brakes while it's up here? Front pads are getting thin. Another couple thousand miles and you'll hear it. You ask him how much. 90, maybe 110 if the rotors need resurfacing. You tell him to go ahead. He nods, wipes his hands on the rag again, out of habit more than need, and goes to pull the car into the bay. And for a second the shop is just you, the compressor, and a number you didn't ask him to add. You think seriously, standing in Duval's shop watching him write $400 on a pad about just going and buying a car today. Not a flashy one. Something reasonable, something a person with a normal job and a normal life could plausibly drive without anyone doing a double take, $40,000 or $50,000. A number small enough against what's sitting in that account that it would barely register, less significant, in real terms, than a grocery run. You picture it for a full minute. A car that starts every single time. No check engine light, no gray rag, no Thursday appointment. You picture what it would feel like to never again stand somewhere doing math on $400. You actually drove past a dealership 2 weeks ago, on a Saturday, no particular reason, and sat in the parking lot for 11 minutes with the engine off, watching a salesman in a blue shirt walk a family around cars that all cost more than a year of your current mortgage payments combined. You didn't go in. You told yourself it was because you didn't want to deal with a salesman, which was true, and also not the actual reason, which was that you'd already run the numbers 3 separate times that week and kept arriving at the same answer without ever quite admitting you'd made a decision. A man walks into the waiting area while you're still sitting there, phone to his ear, telling whoever's on the line he'll just pay cash for the whole repair and be done with it. He hangs up, glances at you, and says, mostly to fill the silence, "Must be nice not having to sweat this stuff." You tell him it adds up either way, which isn't a real answer, and he doesn't seem to notice, already back on his phone. You think for a second about what it would take to become that man permanently, and the thought sits there a while before it fades, because you already know what it would cost, and it isn't measured in dollars. You don't check the account again, because you already know the number, and knowing it without needing to look is, you realize, most of what $11 million has actually bought you. Then you picture the actual mechanics of owning it. A newer car in your driveway means a conversation with your sister, who still thinks you're doing fine but tight, the way she's thought for 15 years, ever since you helped cover 3 months of her rent without ever telling her where the money actually came from. It means your neighbor, Margot, who waters your plants when you travel, and has never once asked what you do for a living beyond the vague answer you gave her the day you moved in, starting to ask better questions, because a $50,000 car in a driveway is the kind of thing that makes people start doing math about you, the way you're currently doing math about $400. It means, eventually, someone asking how, and you not having an answer that doesn't require explaining 18 years of an index fund and a divorce you don't discuss, and a decision made a long time ago and never really revisited, that the number in that account was never going to be a number anyone else got to have an opinion about. You have watched what happens to people once other people know. Your cousin Grady won $30,000 on a scratch ticket 4 years ago, not even a life-changing amount, and by the following Thanksgiving, half the family had a version of a story about what he owed them. An old loan, a favor, a debt nobody could quite itemize, but everyone seemed to remember differently. Somewhere behind you, Duval's compressor kicks on with a low hydraulic hiss, the same sound this shop has made every time you've ever sat in this chair. And you let it anchor you back into the room before you keep going. Grady went from being Grady to being the guy with money, a category, a resource, a slightly different person in every room he walked into for about a year, until the money was mostly gone, spent on a truck and a series of loans that never quite paid him back, and he got to quietly go back to being Grady again, poorer and a little more tired, but at least legible to everyone around him in the way he'd been before. You think about what the car looks like from the outside, what it's told everyone who's ever seen it in your driveway or in this parking lot. Broke, probably. Careful with money, at best, the charitable read. Someone who bought a Civic new or used a long time ago and never got around to upgrading, the kind of person coworkers assume needs the overtime shift more than they do, the kind of person nobody asks to split a large check evenly at dinner because everyone silently agrees to round down in your favor. You have let every one of those assumptions stand for 18 years without correcting a single one, and standing in this shop today, watching Duval get ready to charge you $400 for a sensor, you understand for the first time exactly what all those wrong assumptions have been quietly doing for you the entire time. Somewhere in the bay, an impact wrench chatters against a lug nut, 3 quick bursts, and stops. That's the same thing you keep circling back to, the thing that knowing the number without checking has actually bought you. They have kept you unremarkable. Nobody has ever asked you for money you didn't offer first, on your own terms, in amounts you chose. Nobody has ever looked at you and started doing the math people do around money, the math your cousin lived inside for a year, the math that turns a person into a resource before it turns them back into a person. The car isn't cheap because you can't afford better. The car is expensive in a way no receipt has ever shown, because what it actually buys you is the specific, durable relief of walking into a room and being nobody's idea of an opportunity. Picture the version of your life where the driveway has a different car in it, where the math changes for everyone around you the moment they see it. And try to name what you'd actually gain from that version that you don't already have, sitting quietly in a brokerage account with your name on it. A smoother ride. No check engine light. Something you'd have to insure for more, register for more, explain eventually to someone at a barbecue who asks an innocent question about payments. You cannot come up with a single thing the new car would buy you that the old car, and the $11 million nobody knows about behind it, doesn't already provide in a form that costs you nothing but $400 every 18 months and an afternoon in a plastic chair. Duval pulls the car around 40 minutes later, hands you the keys, wipes his hands on the rag one last time before he tells you the total. $490 with the brakes, he says. Sensors ordered. Should have it in by Thursday, like I said. You hand him a card. Sign for $490 against an account that could buy this entire shop and the block it sits on without changing what you have for dinner tonight. And you drive out of the lot with the same check engine light still technically on until Thursday, in the same car, toward the same life nobody has ever once looked at twice. Thursday comes. You bring the car back. Duval wipes his hands on the same rag, same fold, same back pocket, and while he's writing up the sensor, he mentions, offhand, that his landlord raised the shop's rent again this year, third time in 5, and that he's been getting calls from a guy who wants to buy the place outright and turn it into a car wash. Probably take the offer eventually, he says, not looking up from the pad. Can't keep eating rent increases forever on break jobs. He says it the way he says everything, flat. No weight added to it on purpose, and hands you the keys. You sit with that the whole drive home. You have never once thought about what happens to this particular kind of invisibility when the person holding the other end of it retires, or sells, or simply isn't standing behind that counter anymore, wiping his hands on a rag before he tells you a number that has never once been inflated, padded, or aimed at what you might be able to afford instead of what the part actually costs. There will be another mechanic somewhere, eventually. But it will not be this exact rag, this exact man who has spent 3 years never once wondering why, and you drive the rest of the way home doing the kind of math you don't usually let yourself do, not about money this time, about how much of what you actually have has never once shown up on a balance sheet.